Democrats have a little bit more reason to be optimistic about the coming midterms in a few weeks. According to new reports, Donald Trump's support in Rust Belt states, the very states that he was able to turn blue or at least get enough of the majority in order to get the electoral votes needed to win the presidency, those states put him in office. Those were the states ignored by Hillary Clinton. But now they're turning on Donald Trump. States like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Ohio, they're all feeling the effects of Donald Trump's trade wars. And this doesn't even include all the farmers out in the Midwest. These are just that Rust Belt area, up in the upper Midwest. But they are starting to realize that Donald Trump has conned them. Donald Trump wasn't telling the truth, and Donald Trump's policies are starting to wreck their lives. That's what's happening in the Midwest right now, in that Rust Belt. With the new tariffs on steel, on aluminum, things like that, manufacturing is coming to a crawl in many of these areas. Donald Trump's approval rating, the highest one he has in those states, is 45% in Pennsylvania. He's at 42% in Wisconsin, 42% in Michigan, 44% in Iowa, 40% in Minnesota. Those are really, really, really bad numbers heading into a very contentious midterm. So Republicans who have no idea what to do at this point are trying to spend millions upon millions of dollars just to save seats in those states. That's what's so sad about it for them, and it's a sadness that's not really a sadness. I have no empathy for these horrible human beings. It's sad because they're no longer trying to win additional seats. They're not trying to pick anything up. They're trying to save a few that they have to make the blue wave less intense. Right now, they're trying to just stem the hemorrhaging. There are 5 Senate seats and 5 House races within the Rust Belt that were once considered solid Republican that are now considered to be toss-ups. There were several Democratic Senate nominees that Republicans were confident just 6 months ago they could flip those seats, but now the Democrats in those races actually hold at least an 11-point advantage. The Republicans are in for a massacre in the midterms, and they understand that. So that's why they're diverting so much money into these states, but it's not going to help. The voters in there, one, according to the reports, they don't have Hillary Clinton to hate anymore, so they don't have somebody to vote against in these races. And 2, they understand, more importantly, that Donald Trump conned them, that he's a horrible human being and an even worse president, and that he's never going to deliver on the jobs or the economic activity that they, the average worker, were promised. They're not in the top 1%, so they haven't seen these big economic gains that the rest of the, millionaires and billionaires have seen. They just see their paychecks actually shrinking. Their buying power, because of inflation and decrease in wages, shrinking by 3% in the last 12 months alone. Their paycheck doesn't go as far anymore. And they know who's in charge. And that is 100% every single branch of the government, Republicans, and that's why they're going to make them pay in this year's midterms. So there's a lot to unpack from yesterday's testimony of Brett Kavanaugh, so let's just start with the very first, most obvious fact of what happened yesterday in the Senate. And that is that Brett Kavanaugh came into that chamber with one job to do. And that job was to prove to everyone on that panel that he wasn't a crazy person that would act on rage and aggression. And from the moment Kavanaugh opened his mouth, he failed. He could not do that. He could not control his rage. He could not control his emotions. And doesn't that sound like the behavior of somebody that would try to force a woman into sexual acts that she has said no to? Because that is exactly the kind of behavior you would expect from someone who does those kinds of things. That's the biggest takeaway. The second thing is that one of the reasons this man was so angry, one of the reasons he cried, was because this is a privileged white male who, for the first time in his life, was having to face consequences for his actions. That's what that was about. Man doesn't care about his name or his family and all that. That's not what it was about. It was about a wealthy, privileged white guy who finally had to answer some questions. And we saw that privileged white guy come out all throughout his testimony, especially when you had Senator Amy Klobuchar ask him if he had ever blacked out from drinking. And his response was, I don't know, have you? Really? That's what you're going to go with? These people are determining your future on the Supreme Court, and you're going to answer a question with, I don't know, have you? As if you're still some drunken frat boy? Every single thing the man said, every weird facial expression that he made proved without a doubt that he is unfit to serve on the United States Supreme Court. Now that didn't stop Republicans. Republicans loved it. Lindsey Graham became a hero of the right for his crazy outbursts and absolute utter insanity during that hearing. They loved him. They voted for him. Hell yeah, we want this guy on the Supreme Court. Now let's talk about, obviously, his emotional and mental state alone would make him unfit. So let's move on to the, can he be an honest jurist? Could he sit and not inflect his politics into his decisions? The answer to that was given to us yesterday, and it's no. Because he immediately began his hearing by attacking Democrats, by going after them, saying, peddling conspiracy theories that this is obviously revenge for him working for Ken Starr during the Clinton investigation. It's Dems. These damn Democrats are just out to get him. So yeah, probably not going to let his politics be put aside when he's ruling on cases at the Supreme Court. That also would make him unqualified and unfit to serve. And another thing that makes him even more unfit to serve and should have immediately disqualified him is that he told 5 verifiable lies during the hearing yesterday. 5. Now, he was under oath, so any lie, big or small, regardless of what it's about, is perjury. That alone is an automatically disqualifying offense. You add it to the other 4 times that this man has had to testify since 2004. Now we're up to 9, and Republicans are still like, nope, that's our guy. We want him. He's going to the Supreme Court, folks. That's what we saw yesterday from Kavanaugh. And the worst part is, it didn't change the minds of a single Republican sitting on that panel. Their minds were made up. They knew they were voting yes. And nothing that was said, no outbursts from Lindsey Graham or Brett Kavanaugh would have changed their minds yesterday. And that puts the rest of this country, the fate of the Supreme Court, on very rocky footing. Because this man is wholly incompetent, corrupt, and incapable of serving as an impartial jurist on the U.S. Supreme Court.